At the same time, it is vitally important that local communities have a say in the businesses they allow within their municipalities. This event is an opportunity for people of Legislative District 36 and our good friends to be in conversation with nonpartisan experts to understand the facts surrounding cannabis. We have assembled this panel discussion as a service to our constituents of District 36. And I hope that this evening and this event will bring more clarity to everyone wherever you may fall on the debate. With that being said, I take great pleasure in introducing Councilwoman Beg Robertson to the podium and to let her introduce herself and, most importantly, the people of our panel this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for being here.
Okay, so I'm going to stand right here. So we plan to be here till 8:30, so we're going to try and move things along. I've heard these meetings can take hours, but 8:30 I think is a good time. So the reason why I thought it was important to have this event, I attended a very similar event as a councilwoman. I was a new councilwoman and I felt like I learned so much about the cannabis industry and I felt like residents should know. So I would like to introduce the panel to you, and if you could tell the audience why you're here and your role in this work. So let's start with Hugh O'Byrne.
Hello. Oh, hi. Can you all hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Great. My name is Hugh O'Byrne. I am the president of the New Jersey Cannabis Industry Association. We're an association of the current and aspirational, should I say, New Jersey cannabis industry. We were formed in 2017 in anticipation of Governor Murphy and the change in the public stakeholders' views of the medical program as well as future adult use opportunities. We were gathered together as an organization to cast our net broadly around North America to find operators and other industry stakeholders, get the benefit of their hindsight from the different jurisdictions that they operate in, synthesize some best practices, and do our best to try and help Jersey out. So that's me.
And this is Mayor Colleen Marr.
Hi, good evening. My name is Colleen Marr. I am the mayor in the borough of Fanwood, which is located in Union County. I've been the mayor, I'll be going into my 16th year. And I also currently serve as the president of the New Jersey State League of Municipalities. And the New Jersey State League of Municipalities is the organization of which all 565 municipalities belong to. So we are the lobbying arm of all the municipalities. We are the voice at the State House for our members, and our members are just not mayors, they're also code officials, they're your council people, they're anybody that has to do with anything in local government. And I'm here tonight to talk to you a little bit about what we see is happening on the statewide level and how that could be translated down into tonight's conversation.
And I will introduce Dr. James Salwitz.
Well, there you go. Hi, Jim Salwitz. So I'm a president of medical staff at Robert Johnson University Hospital. I'm a professor at the medical school, Rutgers Medical School. But I'm also a medical oncologist in practice with our CCA. Our CCA is the largest oncology provider in New Jersey. It's 146 physicians. You just know them as your local doctors. So like the doctors at Hackensack, many of the doctors at Robert Wood, hospitals throughout the state. We were a very early adopter within weeks of the start of the program 5-6 years ago. We have used marijuana now in the range of 1,000 patients. This for us has been a revolutionary therapy, which we're using more and more broadly in a more wide range of patient care, and has made a tremendous difference for a gigantic number of our patients. And at this point, I think many of us would be most distressed not to have it, as a tool in our arms.
Thank you. Will Jones III.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm the Communications and Outreach Associate with the organization Smarter Purchase of Marijuana, and we work on marijuana policy at the state and federal level. We're a bipartisan organization founded by Congressman Patrick Kennedy, Dr. Kevin Smith, who worked for the Obama administration as a drug advisor, as well as David Frum. And we work on marijuana policy issues, whether it's decriminalization, recreational, and medical as well. So looking forward to the discussion this evening, and just a little bit about myself, how I got into this. I actually live in Washington, D.C. I'm a firefighter there as well. Just as thinking about these issues, wanted to really bring a perspective of how our recreational drug policies impact our disadvantaged communities. And I started an organization called Two Is Enough in Washington, D.C. Two Is Enough stands for alcohol and tobacco. We already have them, and they disproportionately target our communities. Alcohol and tobacco advertisements and liquor stores proliferate our communities, and so we're working to make sure that that doesn't happen again with another recreational industry.
Okay, I'm Captain Feliciano from our Rutherford Police Department.
Hi, my name is Patrick Feliciano. I'm a police captain, Rutherford Police Department here. I serve as the executive officer, and I oversee the patrol division, internal affairs, and training division. And prior to that, I was a criminal investigator with the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office, Narcotics Task Force. A lot of wind there. So I'm here to give you whatever perspective I can with respect to public safety issues that may arise, as well as law enforcement practices that result from any further legislative actions regarding marijuana usage.
Thank you. So let me tell you the format for the next hour. You have note cards on your table, and whenever you feel inspired, write a question down, and we will start collecting questions, within the next 15 minutes. But what I want to do is warm up by asking our panelists some questions first, okay? So the style of the panel is I will be asking the questions. All you have to do is write them down, and we'll come and collect them. And that's just to encourage equity and voice. We want to make sure that all people are heard and not just some people. So we feel like if everyone has a chance to write their questions down, we could group them and we could get to them, okay? Colleen, I'd like to start with you. Would you tell us the current state of affairs when it comes to marijuana legislature in our state and how it affects us locally?
Sure. So first I want to thank yourself and the Assemblyman for actually doing tonight's discussion. As the president of the league, I get to travel around the New Jersey, and over the last year, I can't tell you how many communities are doing this. They're talking, they're struggling, they're trying to figure out where does marijuana, cannabis have its role in their community. And we have seen really a wide range of opinions on this. So the league's official position is that we are not for or against, because we represent 565 mayors, 565 towns. And it's kind of split down the middle of where we see people's opinion. Our job is to really make sure as a bill progresses, which there was a lot going on over the last year and kind of came to a crashing and screeching halt when they couldn't find the votes to pass it out of the Senate to pass the recreational marijuana. We found towns were going and passing resolutions in support and against. So we have all different types of opinions being resonated out there, and our job is to really watch what's happening on the legislative side and to be a voice to make sure if and when it becomes legal on the recreational side, that the towns that choose, because this is all about a choice that you have to do this, that there's the best piece of legislation that is passed that really can make sure that the choices that you make benefit your community. So what we see right now is a lot of conversations going on like this, where the community gets a chance to ask questions, where your local elected officials have ears. Because I have found many times that mayors and council want to hear from their very constituents. I don't know many of us that sit up on a dais that pretend to know better than the community. And once you start thinking you know better than the community, I think you find yourself very short-lived in that position that you're in. So we see now there's been an expansion of the medical, as recently as last week, where there was applications that was open to the Department of Health that put out for going for 24 additional medicinal licenses that are, and I think you had less than about 195 applicants are vying for those 24 licenses. So right now, currently in New Jersey, we have 6 up and running medicinal locations. Some have satellites, meaning that they've had the opportunity to open up a secondary location. We've had then another round of 6 licenses that have been awarded, but I don't think that any of those 6 new licenses have actually opened up yet. And then you had the 24 licenses. So you see a lot of attention and expansion of the medicinal right now going on in the state of New Jersey. And I believe you'll start to see more of that, and a lot of more conversations about that, because the recreational piece has kind of stopped in Trenton with the votes. And now there's a talk of going out for a referendum question November 2020.
Okay, this is a question for Hugh. Assemblyman Scher mentioned Jake Honing's law. Can you explain that and how it has changed the demand for medical marijuana in our state?
Sure. So the Jake Honig's law, which is the amendment to the original law governing medical cannabis, state of New Jersey, is named after a child that suffered greatly from cancer, I believe, and found some solace towards the very end of his life in the medical program, but it had quite an ordeal. And Governor Murphy, very early on, became very taken by the story, and in his initial steps in trying to expand access to medical marijuana in the state, seized upon that narrative as an example of what we need to make sure doesn't happen again. What the Jake Honig's law is it's an amendment to our underlying several-year-old law, the Marijuana Act. This bill, which is now an act, was signed into law on July 2nd of this year. It's a extraordinary piece of legislation, if you ask me. As I review legislation from around the nation, of course, there are different approaches to medical cannabis regulation, legalization, medical access, as well as to adult use approaches. This medical bill, I think, is extraordinary in that it's so comprehensive. It seeks to touch and strike a balance between being as empowering to physicians, as destigmatizing, as uplifting to patients as possible, and really does some extraordinary work in trying to be very sensitive to the needs of the suffering in the state. At the same time, it blends in a very thought-forward but yet strict approach to the industry's growth and development and its supply chain, and in particularities that will eventually come into play. And then at the same time, through creating a new regulatory apparatus, medical cannabis and medical and adult use in the future will be governed or regulated by a new commission that was empowered by this law. This is a semi-independent agency, I suppose. It's going to be in Treasury, but not of Treasury. It's going to be 5 appointees, as well as a staff that's going to be charged with overseeing medical cannabis, and then eventually, one hopes, adult use. Like I said, the bill is notable for attending carefully to the myriad of ways in which the supply chain of any industry, but particularly cannabis in 2021, needs to be brought in out of the cold and into regulation. In addition to that, it is very, very sensitive to patients. And then it also takes, as much as it can, without adult use, it takes some very definite strides towards trying to make certain that there is an entrepreneurial opportunity in law for the people of the state of New Jersey, particularly people that represent communities that have been disproportionately and negatively impacted by the insanity of the last 100 years of forced prohibition. So anyway, we should be very proud of the work our legislature has done. It is a landmark, and I don't see any state around us with anything as comprehensive or as sensitive to what we've just done.
Thank you. So this is a question for Dr. Salwitz. From the public health perspective, how are physicians viewing the expansion of medical marijuana?
So I think physicians in general, like I know physicians in general, are more and more accepting, more and more building this into their care plans. And I think originally we entered into it thinking, as cancer doctors, about nausea and fatigue and those discomforts. But I think we're gradually learning the much broader areas that this substance has, and its high safety profile. I mean, the ability of people to use marijuana but still function at a fairly high level, to avoid other drugs and situations that that may be much more overwhelming. We very commonly now see cancer patients and other patients that come to us that are become more dependent, on opioids or other medications that have significantly more side effects. And you're talking about a substance, cannabis, that has pretty close to no medical side effects in its medical form. I mean, I think we have to distinguish between medical and recreational in the sense that the major difference between medical and recreational is the amount of THC. Street recreational marijuana is about 75% THC, medical is 15% or less, sometimes as little as 1 or 2%. So medical is not designed to make you high. I mean, I have patients with severe neuropathy and pain, for example, they get up in the morning and use marijuana so that they can function and go to work and live their days. And so I think physicians are more and more accepting this, building it in earlier in their care choices. We had a significant problem for a number of years that physicians weren't signing up to be part of the program and to be dispensing, even though it's for a physician, it's not a difficult jump at all. But I think now more clinicians, in fields other than the severe specialties like oncology, are starting to build into this, and we're seeing more expansion, more acceptance.
Thank you. So I have a question for Will Jones, and it's an expansion on Dr. Solwitz's question. How can local municipalities participate in addressing the opioid epidemic through the expanded medical marijuana program?
Yeah, so when we're talking about medical marijuana, I just want to kind of clear up some terms for us all in the room as we talk about this, and also, distinguish between just general cannabis businesses and then those as used medically. Just the term medical marijuana is very misleading when we actually dig down into it, because it's very rare that we're going to talk about the raw plant as the form of medication. With any other medicine, there's thousands of plants that we use for medicine. We harness the medicinal properties of it and make it available for medicinal use. For example, we get morphine, a derivative of opium. We don't say we have medical opium laws. Or aspirin is, there's components of it that come from willow tree bark, but we don't say we have medical willow tree bark laws. And so when we're talking about this issue, it means a lot of different things, particularly depending on the state that you're in, because unfortunately, partisan legislators who aren't, medically, scientifically qualified have decided what can be treated by medical marijuana in their respective states. So it looks widely different depending on which state you're in. And then also even what that medicine is varies widely depending who, when you say generally medical marijuana, it can mean a host of different things. So if you look at national surveys on marijuana use, the average medical marijuana card holder is a 35-year-old white male with self-reported back pain. Now, when we're talking about some of the specific things of it, whether it's one of the oils, or if we're talking about CBD and the use for children with seizures and epilepsy, which has proven very helpful for those things, that's a completely different matter. So just in general, there's a lot of laziness with the term medical marijuana, and it can mean something as somebody just getting a card to get high, or genuine medicinal use, as the doctor said. There's a huge difference with whether the THC is present or not. All that being said, there are definitely medical benefits, particularly when we're talking about the cannabis does not have the high THC levels. When we're talking about, as your question mentioned, the opioid epidemic in the United States, there are some studies that have shown that it has shown promise in reducing the opioid use in states, and there's also studies that have shown that it's not. In fact, some of the most widely cited ones that have shown a reduction in that, there have been subsequent studies that have shown that there's actually has not been a significant decrease associated with medical marijuana laws. And again, that may be because the laws themselves are very broad. It's not specific to a certain type of a component of the plant. And so we just have to be very careful. If we're going to address things like the opioid epidemic, we have to be very precise in what we're talking about when we say medical marijuana laws, and it not be abused or misused to just mean a general use of smoking, THC because you want it, versus the genuine, approved medications. For example, FDA last year approved Epidiolex. Most people haven't heard of that, but that's a derivative of the marijuana plant. It's approved by the FDA, and so that's another good example of the actual medicinal way to move forward with it. So if we're going to address whether it's the opioid epidemic or any other things, epilepsy, seizures, cancer, we need to be very precise and not have just a general term about it, because when we're talking about general marijuana use, there are a host of negative effects that we can see from just recreational use, including that some, not everyone, but some users are more likely to go into opioid abuse later on in life. So it really depends on what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that makes a really good point. You say, how did you get to this chaotic place? They are talking about dozens of different kinds of products, dozens of kind of indications, and everybody has a different experience. And that is, this didn't come from doctors, obviously. It came from the lay population in general saying, there's something out there that is really, we have experience that says this really helps. And there came from the groundswell, and then this groundswell has to deal with the fact that this is against federal law. I mean, the 1970 Controlled Substance Act indicate that this is a Schedule I drug classified with crack, heroin, etc., which made no sense. By the way, that was supposed to be a temporary indication, which was supposed to expire, and multiple people, including the New England Journal of Medicine, the AMA, have said a long time ago it shouldn't be Schedule I. But because it's Schedule I, it's impossible to do research on it. You can't legally go out and just start doing research on your friends on lithium heroin. And that's classified the same way. So one of the chaos we have, the problems we have with the mixed messages and the communication is that we're really learning this kind of on the back end. We're learning it by using it in the general population as opposed to doing research. I think that's one thing the new bill does. It gives them more possibility now that maybe in New Jersey we can find some places to start doing some research and stuff, as this, other countries of the world are way ahead of this on research, in the use of this agent. So.
Thank you. Okay, and Captain Feliciano, can you talk about the public safety costs to a municipality in hosting a cannabis business, and what effects would it have on police resources?
Well, definitely training, because as things are evolving, and in this field, certainly they're always prone to evolve, depending on what the legislature passes and what uses are permitted. In terms of field use, we've run across individuals who claim to have medical marijuana cards. They have fraudulent medical marijuana cards. The New Jersey Regional Intelligence Center is a great asset for us. They're very quick to be able to respond and verify whether the cards are valid or not. I've spoken to some colleagues where medical marijuana has colleagues in the Sea Caucus, they've had issues with that in terms of fraudulent cards and people congregating in the area under the guise of medical marijuana and kind of hanging out of the umbrella, so to speak. So we would definitely have to train our personnel, but it would be similar to any other new legislature that comes down the road, and you adapt and you handle it accordingly.
Thank you. Okay, so Hugh, I'm going to bring it back to you, and we're going to pull up some slides. Can you tell us about the 3 types of permits that can be issued, and the types of cannabis activities under each permit, and the physical characteristics of each type of facility?
Okay, so in the state of New Jersey, we have traditionally, we have a fairly venerable law, actually, as far as states go with medical cannabis. And initially, most of the states that went medical cannabis assumed a vertically integrated supply chain, which meant that every piece of the business was held by one owner, and often, as in this state, required physical co-location. The basic 3 pieces around of the supply chain around the country, and certainly the 3 that are recognized in the medical law in New Jersey are cultivation, processing, manufacturing/processing, and then retail or dispensing. So cultivation is, as it sounds, it's essentially an indoor farm. We have the possibility for growing in specialized steel-walled greenhouses of a Dutch origin, Dutch greenhouses they're called. But the majority, I think all of the cannabis that's grown currently in the state is grown in warehouses, and I think due to some quality concerns around maybe mycotoxins or other types of molds, et cetera, that people prefer, especially in the humid environment and the challenging weather environment of a place like New Jersey, to grow indoors under light. Lights tend to be high pressure sodium halide or LEDs. The plant is something that is grown from clones. It's tagged from the moment it is extant in the cultivation facility all the way through its harvest and eventual movement in the supply chain to people. It's tagged and tracked and will be tagged and tracked more as in most states. We're still catching up on a few things. Seed to sale tracking, so as a result, people will be able to have a type of industry control in the state that's very, very tight. That's where we're heading. So this would be cultivation. Cultivation in the last round is one of the three, as we break up vertical integration and move eventually to a permissible integration, which means that if you can merit each one of or multiple of these permits, you can have them, or if you acquire them in a permitted fashion through the Department of Health or merger or acquisition, you can have them. But basically, we have a cultivation permit, we'll have the processing permit, which is often found with the cultivation permit. So is the processing permit. The processing permit allows for the extraction and creation of products, whether they be in edible form, topical form, oils, waxes, all of the different proliferations Dr. Solis was talking about, of products that are being generated as quickly as every time I turn around, there's a whole new category of products that use extracted cannabinoids and terpenes in there for sale. And then finally, both of those, either cultivation directly or through processing, finds its way into retail, which would be the dispensary. The retail facility is the first facility that actually has an interaction with the public. Under the new bill, the dispensary will eventually be allowed to deliver to homes, as well as to have in-store visits from consumers. Both cultivation facilities and processing facilities are typically going to be zoned in manufacturing industrial. We can't have them in agricultural zoning. It's not allowed, even though it's an seemingly agricultural use. That has to do with tax and other municipal control. Reference to that. And then in the retail, that's the footprint where we see the lines in Massachusetts and other places of people with adult use of consumers and patients looking to purchase the medicine. The facilities themselves, I think we have some photos of them, are quite, in the East Coast in particular, huge amounts of money go into them. They're relatively limited, certainly by comparison to anything out west. We have very, very few, if any, of these permits. So as a result of the competitive nature and seeking these permits, people build, they compete, so they spend a huge amount of money. These are really lovely places. And it's great and to be a lovely place for a number of reasons, one of which is the fact that a patient going into one of these facilities is going to be having to deal with this strange fact that it's still illegal in some very important federal sense, and there's a stigma around it. So having a nice place where you don't, and the regulations around the security that you need to have are so intense, it's very easy to feel like a criminal, even though you're just trying to get some palliative care or some other care from the facilities. So a great deal of money is spent in this. Huge amounts of compliance goes all the way through these facilities. They range in size in New Jersey from about 2,000 square feet to about 6,000 square feet. There are 6 right now that are located, another 6 are scheduled to hopefully eventually open sometime or another, and then we have another 19, so of the 24 permits that were just announced, 19, so there were 4 vertical opportunities. Each of those have a retail component, and then there were 15 other storefront opportunities individually owned, so for a total of 19 new stores in the state and there were five cultivations, only permits. So we had 4 vertically integrated permits, 5 cultivation only permits, and 15 individual storefront permits in this last round that went on. And get ready, because this bill has, the act actually has another RFA built into it, which we should be doing this all over again, with new, another balance of permit types in maybe January or so. That one's not exactly clear on the timing, but I think it could be around January when that one takes off. And that one's going to happen under the rules of the act, not like this last one, which are under the formal rules. And just to bear in mind, we talked about, so we have cultivation, processing, retail. We're only under the medical bill going to have 28 cultivators for some time. It's capped statutorily. It's up to this commission to determine how many storefronts and how many processors there will be over time. But we're also going to have micro versions of these. So there will be, which are a little bit exempt, so there will be micro businesses, which are specially permitted, smaller use establishments that are designed to allow for a lower barrier to entry for entrepreneur and more greater local control or ownership. So we'll see micro versions of each one of these permits start to open up as well. Bear in mind, there's nothing we would have in our entire state. I've never heard any legislator or municipal official talking credibly about a number of dispensaries that would even approximate what you find in LA city limits, or Denver, let alone the hundreds that you would find throughout California or Colorado. That's not surprising. New Jersey is a very highly regulated state when it comes to cannabis, and will remain so. And the number of opportunities will probably be on the very conservative side, which is good if we're worried. It's good if you're in the industry and you have one of those golden tickets. It's great. It's not so good if you're looking at a lot of entrepreneurial zeal and they're all. But regardless, from any kind of public safety point of view, we are very, very conservative in the amount of permitting we're going to allow.
Thank you. So I'm going to give you about 5-10 minutes just to think about your questions, because I only have 2. So I'm sure there are more. So think about your questions, write them down,